I mean,
Dude, it's legendary. You had one of the first podcasts.
Yeah, Kim Kardashian was on the show.
Somehow, as a 17-year-old kid, you were getting Paris Hilton and Jimmy Fallon and more.
Let me give you the Jimmy Fallon story. I kind of used a guerrilla effort because he was one of the early adopters of Twitter.
You just got your friends to do it?
They would tag him, and we kind of like bombarded him. All of a sudden, I get a notification that he's following me, and he sends me a message like, all right, so when are we doing this?
Welcome to episode 62 of The Edward Show. Today we have a very special guest. This is one of my best friends in the world. His name is Brett Cohen. Brett right now is the head of events at Forbes. And when I met him so long ago, he had one of the first podcasts ever. There was not even a concept of what a podcast was. Nobody knew about podcasts. He was a 16, 17-year-old kid. And at that age, with this show that was getting maybe like 100 listeners per show, he was booking some of the biggest celebrities in the world. People like Kim Kardashian or Jimmy Fallon or Paris Hilton. And on today's episode, Brett's going to share exactly how he got these people on it and how you can do the same now. We met. What year did we meet?
We met in 2009.
Yeah, we met in 2009. I guess I was 19 years old at the time, and
I was in my senior year of high school.
Yeah. So Brett was really young. When I met Brett, I thought he was famous. Like, I thought you were famous. That's why we did that fake celebrity pranks video, which I've talked about a lot on the show. And the reason that
we met interning together. That's the whole story. We met interning together at WABC, the local ABC affiliate in New York City. We were both interning there, and we shared, the same desk, got to know each other. That's really how we met.
That's how we met. That's exactly how we met.
You skipped over that and went to fake celebrity. Actually, you know what's kind of crazy? That was only 3 years later.
Yeah. We became good friends real fast.
Yeah, very, very quickly.
The reason I thought you were famous is because you had, this is crazy. You're one of the OG podcasters. So there was this, do you want to talk about Blog Talk Radio?
Blog Talk Radio is a network that I used to do a podcast on. It was at a time where there were people podcasting, but not very many. No one knew what a podcast was. It was at the time where when you were telling people about your podcast, you'd have to call it internet radio. It was such a cringe moment because when you had to say internet radio, the immediate assumption is, oh, so you kind of just record and no one's listening to you and you just publish something. I think blog had a stigma with it at that point. There was no such thing as an influencer. It wasn't like it is now where, podcasting is a massive, massive industry. The only celebrities I can think of that were even doing it then, you had Tom Green was doing a podcast that was pretty big. Adam Carolla was doing his. I don't even know if Rogan was going at that time, but he was pretty early. So I did a show. I started it when I was in 10th grade. So on this site, they had free tools, like a little web-based production tool where, you could take callers and you'd run it like a radio show. And I would just have people on. I'd have friends on. And then I was like, hey, why don't I try to interview people? Like, why don't I have people on?
Real people. The reason I wanted Brett to come on, Brett has like a ton of incredible stories. The reason I wanted Brett for this first episode with Brett is because he, as a 16-year-old kid, was getting A-listers on his internet podcast before there were podcasts. And somehow, as a 17-year-old kid, you were getting Paris Hilton and Jimmy Fallon and more to come on your show. And that's insane that you were doing that. And even now, over 10 years later, I'm mesmerized by the fact. So I said on my episode this morning, on the one I recorded, episode 61 this morning, this show is going to come out the next day. And what I said on episode 61 is that you are the best person at PR that I know. That's completely true. You have the best understanding of public relations that I know. And that's why you, at 16 years old, was able to get some of the biggest people in the world to come on your show on Blog Talk Radio before anybody had any concept of a podcast. Is it wild?
No, thank you. I mean, looking back on it, I don't think I realized at the time how innovative it was, and I certainly wasn't doing it for that reason. For me, it was just fun, and if anyone listened to it other than my friends, like, that was a nice bonus. I mean, I think the thing that confuses me a lot is why I stopped doing it. In college, I really didn't have the time to dedicate towards it, and, in
Dude,
high school,
it's the
I
same
did.
reason it's the same reason we didn't keep making those videos on YouTube is because there was no concept of what this would turn into. Everyone at the time, and I sent you that episode where I said everyone at the
Yeah.
time thought the big opportunity was creating something on the internet and then going into TV or film, when actually it was sticking with the internet. Like,
I mean,
yeah.
I graduated college a year after Fake Celeb came out. If I had said to my mom, even with the success that I had, I was like, I think I'm just going to do YouTube videos full time. I think she'd still be like, yeah, but can you really make money doing that? Like,
No, she would totally be. My
you know what I
parents were
mean?
like that. Everyone was. We were like that.
Everyone was like
So
that. We
for
were like,
background, I've talked
but
about
now,
for any listeners who don't know Fake Celebrity Pranks NYC, that was one of our biggest videos. We went on the biggest TV shows in the world, international news shows. You can just search Fake Celebrity Pranks NYC. I also talk about the story of that on, I don't remember the episode number, but it's called like I recorded this episode on a bike, and I give the story of that. And Brett is the star of that video. And Brett engineered Brett. That'll be another topic for a show. How you engineered the crazy press. I mean, it got the press because the video was good, but if you weren't there and it was like me handling that, I wouldn't have known what to do. And so, yeah, you know how to handle publicists. You know how to handle journalists better than anybody that I know. And so that's why I wanted you on the show, because I wanted you to explain. I don't even completely remember how you were able to get these big people on your podcast before there even were podcasts, and maybe just give like two stories. I think that would be cool.
to answer that question accurately, I think, it goes without saying my approach to it changed a lot over time as I was learning what was working and what wasn't. So at that point, I almost can't tell people this is a podcast or internet radio. So I certainly couldn't share with them how many listeners I had because I didn't have any. I would get maybe a couple hundred people per episode. And granted, it's not
Dude, that's pretty good for that time.
well, I mean, look, it was actually less than that for a good chunk of time. But I mean, I got up to that and I was still trying to figure out how to book guests, but it was nothing, to share with
Well,
them
it's
because
so funny that you had like 100 listeners an episode, and you got Jimmy Fallon on the show, man.
well, so here's the other thing. So obviously I couldn't share my numbers and all that, but my listenership outside of me just like trying to promote it, and I didn't have a social presence or anything like that. So it's really just sending it to family and friends. My audience was actually limited to people who were on Blog Talk Radio looking for shows to listen to. So I was really, and people weren't listening to podcasts. It wasn't a thing. No one knew what it was. So it was a very small pond. But let me give you the Jimmy Fallon story. I really wanted him on. I thought he'd be a really fun guest. He was just starting to host late night on NBC. I had been to a few tapings. I kind of used a guerrilla effort because he was one of the early adopters of Twitter as far as celebrities go. I don't know if everyone necessarily gives him credit for that, but he was one of the first bigger celebrities to be like active. And when he first started late night, honestly, no one was watching it. His ratings were terrible. During the day, he was like trying to engage fans on Twitter. And I had a bunch of people tweeting at him to come on the show.
So you just got your friends to do it?
Yeah, I would like script out posts for them. They would tag him and we kind of like bombarded him. All of a sudden, I get a notification that he's following me and he sends me a message like, all right, so when are we doing this?
He DM'd you or he added you? I don't even remember what functionality Twitter had.
He followed me and then he DM'd me asking me when we're going to do it. And it wasn't a publicist. I don't even think I spoke to.
Did he know how old you were?
No idea, but we did it. We did it a couple days later, and we were just DMing on Twitter, and then he dialed in, and that was that. It was awesome.
Is that still online? Cause somebody search for that?
They dumped a lot of their archive, to be honest
Oh.
with you. I backed up all the shows. I had it on a Seagate hard drive, and it got damaged during Hurricane Sandy in my house in Long Island.
Oh, you don't have that? You
No.
don't have it backed up?
Nope, that was the backup.
Oh my gosh. I was gonna
Yep.
say, if you had that backed up, I would actually put that on I would put that on my show. Like, I can't believe that's not still online.
I mean, I'll double check, but I mean,
Dude,
I
it's
don't.
legendary. You had one of the first podcasts.
Yeah, it was
What was the show? What was
pretty
the show called?
remarkable.
I don't remember.
World Talk Live.
World Talk Live with Brett Cohen. You could probably Google that and see, like it. Oh yeah,
I mean, and I would have silly guests on. I would have porn stars. I had the guy who did Elmo's voice come on in character as Elmo before he was caught harassing children. He's not Elmo anymore. No, I had Mayor Ed Koch on the show. I had Akon. I had Kim Kardashian was on the show.
I didn't remember that. I didn't remember that Kim
She
K
was
was on.
on the show promoting a DVD she was releasing called Fit in Your Jeans by Friday. And she was on for like 45 minutes.
Wow.
Dude, like a long show. Here's how that happened. Like, to pull the curtain back a little bit. So she did this workout DVD with a company. I can't remember the name, but it was like a production company. So, right, they paid her as the talent. They record her. She doesn't have anything to do with it. She just shows up, does the workout, and, films it, and that's it. So I would imagine in her contract to do this as part of what they were paying her to appear in the video, she was obligated to do some press. No one gave a crap, so they couldn't book her for anything. I reached out to them. I responded to their press release on the Newswire. And, who else is going to have her on for an interview to talk about this like low budget workout DVD that she would never do something like this.
How big was she? How big was she back then?
Figure this was 2008, 2009. I mean,
Yeah.
she was a big star, but I mean, this was she was dating, I think, Reggie Bush at the time. I mean, it was a long time ago.
I just think it's so wild that Kim Kardashian went on this like unknown podcast, like what you can't even call it a podcast then, and doesn't have the listener numbers.
You want a funny story?
Well, before that, could you explain what, like, you found the opportunity on The Wire? Could you explain what that means?
So basically, again, there was a production company that made that video with her and hired her to be in it, and obviously the rights to sell it with her name and all of that stuff. So they put out a press release announcing the release of this. At the bottom of it, there's a contact. So I reached out. It was the publicist for that production company. They couldn't book her anywhere to do promotion for this because what outlet in their right mind wants her to come on and talk about this? It was like terrible.
Was this before the tape, before the scandal, or after?
It was after.
It was after, so people wouldn't take her.
I don't know if it was that people wouldn't take her. I think she was still a commodity at the time, but like she had much bigger projects going on than this kind of crappy DVD.
She had like an obligation to do press for the DVD, and no one was doing it, and so, that's funny.
Correct.
That's so
and
funny.
then here I am reaching out. I probably lied about our audience numbers, but whatever.
Yo, fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it.
Oh my God.
But wait. I want to expand on something. You asked me if it was before or after the sex tape. It was after. And I mentioned earlier, I had the capability to take callers on the show. So what I used to do sometimes, because I didn't have listeners who were watching and by the way, these shows were live broadcast online. So it wasn't like I was taping podcasts and then I was actually doing them live.
I know what you're going to say.
So, okay. So you probably remember that. So my dad used to call into the show a lot. And I would script things for him to say and ask and be controversial because, hey, I'm the host. So if a guest calls in and asks, a rather crass or raunchy question, it's no fault of mine. We just didn't screen them properly. Whoops. So I would do that a lot, and it was really fun. When Kim was on, I took my dad's call. I gave him a name to call himself. And again, I scripted this completely, and he was reading it verbatim. Hi, Kim. I'm a big fan of yours. So I have a question for you. Can guys use your tape also? And she's like, yes, of course. It's women in the video, but yes, all of these workouts can be used by men, so I encourage you to buy it and try it out. And yeah, absolutely, men can use it. Oh, awesome. Well, if it's anything like your last DVD, I think we're in for a real treat.
I remember it. So Brett had
She was upset. She was definitely upset, but she's
Brett
like,
Brett had friends
okay.
and family call in and make jokes, and I would call in all the time.
You called in when I had a porn star on. And do you remember that?
I remember calling in with the Cronut guy.
Yes.
I remember
Oh,
that one.
I had Guy Fieri on the show.
Yeah.
And my dad called in to ask, Guy, as a chef, you know, he basically said, what foods can I make for myself to help me take a
Did
And
he
I
answer?
didn't tell him to be that crass about it, but that's what
Did
he
he
did.
answer?
And Guy Fieri, credit to him, I'm pretty sure he answered the question.
Oh my gosh.
And then my uncle calls in, same show, and I didn't prompt him with anything. I was like, yeah, call in, ask a question if you want. I don't care. He says, and he gets overly serious and concerned. He's like, I watch your show, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. He's like, aren't you concerned about your health and like your heart with all this stuff that you're eating? Like, he's like, aren't you concerned? Like, is that of concern to you? Don't you think you're sending the wrong message? He was being totally serious. And interview turned dark.
Darn.
Anyway,
I
it
love
was the
Diners. I love
experience of a lifetime.
DDD. I loved that show. Yeah, it was so okay. Before we wrap, I try to keep these shows short. Brett's gonna come back on. I hope you come back on
Why are we rapping? There's a lot more we could be doing here.
because this is a daily show, and I want to make more episodes about this. I want to extend this over like a bunch of thousands of episodes. I want to extend
Well,
this over thousands of episodes. But I want. Do you think there are opportunities like this that are still there? If like someone's starting a show, actually, before I forget, Bobby Althoff.
yeah,
This is what. Okay, here's something that I really like about what you did so long ago with this unknown show. People think there's no way Bobby Althoff got Drake on her 4-month-old podcast and became the biggest podcast in the world. There's no way that she can do it. I've told the story of how she got Drake on. I believe that was the case. WME, William Morris Endeavor, signed her after she released the trailer for her Drake interview, and Drake came on her show because Drake saw a comedian that he liked being interviewed by her. And the way that she got him is she just offered her existing fans, $300 to whoever could connect her to celebrities. And then one of those celebrities, Drake, followed. Drake saw that. Drake liked it. She DMs Drake. She says, when are you going to come on the show? And Drake's like, I can do it. And she goes and records with Drake 2 days later. People don't believe that. Nobody believes that. And we hear like you talking about, you got Kim Kardashian on, you got Jimmy Fallon on, you got Guy Fieri on. You were 17. This is an unknown show. And some of the biggest people in the world were coming on your show.
yeah.
And like, that's why it drives me a little bit crazy how people don't believe that these types of things can happen. And
Of course they can.
Of course they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I understand why some people find it unbelievable, but the truth is, if there's a will, there's a way. If you want to get in touch with someone, you can do it. I mean, communication, I think, is easier than ever. You can get in touch with someone that's in touch with someone with that person. And I give her a lot of credit for, what she did. You do whatever it takes. At the end of the day, you do whatever it takes. When I was going after someone, I went after them pretty aggressive.
Did I remember you were super, you probably are you so okay, you're head of events at Forbes now. Do you think you're still as aggressive booking people for events or anything like you were before?
Well, that piece of it actually is not part of my job, but the people that I work with are very good and very persistent. But the difference, I would say, And again, it's not part of my job at Forbes, but if it were, I think it would be totally different because I'd have the Forbes brand behind me. I'd have that credibility, 100-plus-year-old legacy media
Yeah, it'd be
brand with
so
a
when
ton of
when was the last time that you had to actually book someone yourself?
well, again, it's not typically part of my job, but I actually am doing it right.
But oh, I don't mean at Forbes, but I mean, like, you're doing it now?
Yes.
For Is it something that you can talk about?
I can talk about it in the sense that I'm in the middle of helping book talent for our under 30 summit. But
Ah,
it's not it's unusual for me to be part of this process.
yeah, and it's probably like you said, it's very easy because you have the Forbes name. So when was the last time that you had to book talent and you didn't have the Forbes name?
I mean, I definitely booked talent when I was at Maxim, but again,
Was
I
that
had a
was that
brand
easy
behind.
with them? Yeah, you had a brand.
Was it easy? No, there was difficulty there because the brand was so tarnished. I guess it's been a while.
Yeah. I'll like you're just one of the most you are one of the most when there's something that you want, there are a few people that I know who are as aggressive as you in going after it and getting it.
I appreciate you saying that, but
Yeah,
I
for real.
never did actually run into Busta Rhymes in meatpacking,
That's
and that
that's
that was
that's
a
true.
goal of mine.
That was it? That
That
was
was a big
something.
goal of mine.
Yeah, that was something that happened to me on a nightly basis. It'll happen. It'll happen. It'll happen eventually. All right, I think we'll wrap. Okay, I wanted to. Yeah, I guess the last question is like, how would if you? I don't know if you even like know anymore, but like if you were trying to get big guests on a podcast, what sort of things would you try to do?
The important thing to understand with big celebrities is that they're not doing press all the time. They limit their press. Less is more. And I think, they do stuff on social. Sometimes they'll post like an influencer thing. But as far as like sitting down and doing interviews, you'll notice that big stars, apart from when they're doing a red carpet, they don't do a lot of sit down interviews. So, what I would say is find out when they're doing press or if they're currently doing press for anything. What are they pushing? Do they have a new business? Are they involved with something new and different? So I'm going to give an analogy here that I think when I give this, it's going to make a lot more sense. Stone Cold Steve Austin, if you wanted to book him for an interview, by the way, he does a great podcast. If you wanted to book him for an interview, you have a better chance of going through the publicist for his beer company than you do for booking him through WWE. If you wanted to book one of the Kardashians still for an interview, you'd probably want to go through one of their partners who they may owe some press to. So maybe it's another company that's creating product for them and it's part of their contract that they have to do a certain amount of press. But then the licensee of their name is also expected to facilitate that through a PR agency. So if they don't get any bites, then the talent is not obligated. So find like little pockets of where these people might be doing press, give them the platform to talk about them. For example, Obama did a bunch of random press because he was pushing Obamacare. He went on the Mark Maron podcast and he did all this unusual non-traditional media, number one, to gain attention, and number two, because they were a lot of the only people that would allow him to reach the younger audience and actually talk about what he was trying to push. So identify what they're trying to push, offer them your platform on a silver platter, and hope that that works. And again, that's one method. That's how when I was doing this and people would ask me the same question, how do I book celebrities? I have a different story for almost everyone that I had on the show. Like I can't tell you I remember all of them specifically, but they were all a little different.
Dude, that's the most interesting part, like the different guerrilla marketing stories in getting in accomplishing big things. Like that's why I have this show, because that's what interests me the most. Brett, thank you for joining the
Thank you for
show.
having me.
I hope you had a good time.
It's always a good time.
Everyone, thank you so much for listening. I will talk to you again tomorrow. Brett's gonna be back. And until
I'll be
then,
back.
bye now.